I'm Maia Carroll.
And I'm Steve McShane.
Coming up on this edition of Begin in the Garden, Steve, who is on Mother Nature's speed dial, will give us gardening tips for dummies as we explore why Monterey County is such a great place to garden.
Well, thank you, Maia. I did talk to Mom, and she did say that if you want to simplify your garden, the best way to do it is to go native.
And speaking of natives, what is the most edible native plant? It will surprise you.
All coming up next at Begin in the Garden. Why things grow and how do things grow in the garden? That's the question we get from gardeners of all levels of experience. So in this segment, we're going to talk about some of the fundamentals of how seeds get started and what it takes to get a plant going for great success. Let's begin by talking about seeds in particular. A lot of folks start gardens from seed. You can buy seeds at your local nursery in packets with hundreds oftentimes of seeds at your disposal. The one example I'll use is beans. Beans in particular are really easy seeds to get going. In the case of the seed itself, you'll see that the seed comes in a protective casing. That casing encloses all the magic inside. Truly, the endosperm, which is inside the seed, is what's going to ultimately feed the plant as it shoots for the soil surface. Once it gets going, cotyledons will emerge. Those are the first leaves, and ultimately a plant will develop. When getting a seed started in the ground, one of the most important things is to get your bed properly set up. I always recommend a good planting mix or a potting soil if you are going to plant in pots, and a starter fertilizer. Both provide nutrients to get things going in the garden. Once you've worked them into the soil effectively, you'd have, similar to this example here, your furrow and your row set up. In getting your seeds started, oftentimes we use either a chopstick or maybe a knife or something, or even in the case of this device, a seed poker, to get your holes going. Depending on the instructions present on the package, you may need to spread them out more or less. In the case of these beans, the instructions show that you're going to need to plant about 1 inch down. It's not going to matter whether the seed is up or down or sideways because, believe it or not, Mother Nature has programmed this puppy with gravity and sunlight from above so that the plant will naturally shoot upwards and the roots naturally shoot downwards. 1 inch down. Once they're in place, we cover, and right away, we're going to want to water. Now, seeds will require moist soil to properly germinate. Not too wet and certainly not dry. That first week or two is really important because the new growth is very tender. But with some careful eyes and some careful attention, in no time at all, our garden will start to grow. Regular feeding after that, in increments of around 3 or 4 weeks, is what's going to work best for your garden and your newly sprouted seeds. And not long after that, you're going to have abundant flowers and you're going to have abundant vegetables to enjoy. That's how things grow from the seed growing up. Now, let's talk about potted plants. Let's talk about plants that come to us already germinated in, say, a 6-pack at the garden center, or even in a small 5-inch pot. Similar to the seeds, getting things started properly is really important. In the case of a potted or a container garden, using high-quality soil and also a little bit of starter fertilizer. This fertilizer is really key because, as you can see on most bags of fertilizer, there's 3 numbers: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, N, P, and K. The P and K are immobile in the soil, so by putting a fertilizer like this one high in the P and K into the root zone, we're able to make it plant available. Once we've got our soil and our starter fertilizer going, we want to make sure that things are a little moist with a little bit of water, and we're ready to plant. Once we've got the roots broken up a little bit, we place our plant center stage and backfill with more potting soil. Firmly packing it down on each side, we want to make sure that there's room for water to collect and ultimately penetrate the root zone. Similar to our beans, regular feeding during the growing season, say from March until even October or November here along the Central Coast, is key. With the right feeding and regular feeding, you're going to see blooms and you're going to enjoy fresh vegetables and fruit in your garden for a long time. That's some essentials on why things grow and how we get things growing in the garden. Thanks so much.
You know, there's an old saying about Monterey County weather. If you don't like the weather where you are, drive 15 minutes and it'll be completely different. The Monterey County area has unique weather and it plays a very important role in your garden.
Monterey County, it's a really interesting place because there's a wide range of microclimates across the area, from places that are right on the coast, Pacific Grove, right on the Big Sur coast, Carmel Highlands, and so forth. And they're experiencing a coastal maritime climate influenced by the cool ocean waters throughout the year, a lot of fog and stratus. And then as we start going further inland, we get away from that marine influence and increasingly towards a somewhat more continental climate where, especially in the summertime, it can really be hot and sunny most of the time. So amazing contrasts and conditions in the characteristic climate conditions across very short distances. It wouldn't be atypical on a summer day for, say, if you're out at Point Sur on the coast there, the temperature might be in the upper 50s during the afternoon, say for the high temperature, and go 30, 40 miles inland to into the Arroyo Seco or over to the inland part of Fort Hunter Liggett or out towards Bradley. And at the same time, the temperature could be 110 to 115. So really incredible differences in temperatures on just a kind of typical summer day across very short geographic lengths. What the climate conditions are could have a big effect on what you could best grow in a particular location. In a place like Pacific Grove or Moss Landing or Castroville, where through the summer season, cool ocean breezes, a lot of fog and stratus, a lot of the time, it's going to be cool weather sorts of crops. They're going to do best, and things that do better with much warmer temperatures and lots of sunshine, that's not going to work so well there, but will work great in areas that are farther inland and protected from that cool marine influence. There's a combination of factors that make portions of Monterey County uniquely bountiful in terms of its agricultural productivity. The soil conditions, availability of water, and of course the climate of the area. And the climate, one of the things about our climate is that, in most places, and especially in the primary agricultural regions of the Salinas Valley and out the Salinas Valley along the coastal strip, very moderate conditions in the wintertime. So freezes are uncommon to rare. There are conditions where plants can be grown throughout much of the year. And then a lot of warm, sunny summer days in the inland areas and very temperate, steady climate conditions closer to the coast. The warmer conditions inland and lots of sunshine, that's great for those sorts of crops that benefit from them. And that steady, temperate marine climate closer to the coast works really well for the sort of crops that need those kind of steady, cool conditions during the summertime, mostly the leafier sorts of vegetables, the strawberries and so forth. The complex interaction of the terrain, the hills and mountains, with the coastal influence and the cool ocean waters. So we get these microclimates, small areas, very close to each other, but which have very different characteristic climates.
There are a lot of plants to choose from when gardening and landscaping, but to truly simplify your garden, choose native plants. We have a special guest, Rosemary Foster, coming up with the Native Plant Society that's going to talk to you all about the secrets, the ins and outs of native plants.
We cover both Monterey and San Benito counties in our chapter. We do several things. We do a lot of education, or we try to. We have wildflower walks. We have service trips, 76 straight months on state property east of Point Lobos, pulling weeds every first Sunday, 76 months straight. And we also do habitat restoration work in other state parks. We work with the Beach Garden Project to revegetate the dunes with native vegetation, and we work here with the Hilton Biolek Habitat for Biological Sciences at Carmel Middle School. For home gardeners, there are several points of value for putting native plants in the garden. One of the most obvious that comes to mind is water usage, because a lot of these plants really don't do well if they're overwatered. They will grow themselves to death, or they will simply drown. So and especially in a water short time, this is a good time to be planting plants that do not need to be watered all the time. It also provides some wildlife habitat if you want quail in your garden or butterflies in your garden, or if you value the native bees and the small insects that help pollinate plants. These are the plants that are going to attract them. But most of all, it gives us a sense of home. It provides a setting that said, yes, this is California. This is the central coast of California. If we include our native manzanitas or ceanothus, or plants like these in the background with the yarrow and the monkey flower and the sage, this says this is California, not this is a generic Mediterranean climate anywhere in 7 places in the world, that this is home. I think the ceanothus or blue blossom, or sometimes called wild lilac, although it's not related to lilac, are the easiest plants for the home gardener to grow. They grow rapidly. They don't need to be watered very much at all past the first summer. They provide lovely blossoms in the spring. They provide seed for quail. The blossoms provide nectar for various beneficial insects, and if we use plants that attract beneficial insects, then we don't have so many of the pest insects, because we encourage their predator insects to show up in the garden. So it really helps eliminate pesticides, reduce water use. And ceanothus come in many different species, from very tall, almost small tree, to very flat, low-growing ground covers. And there are several that are native to the peninsula and native to areas not far from Monterey County that are wonderful in the garden. Monterey County is full of so many varied habitats. We have a lot of the plants that are at their southernmost distribution, things that are found in Northern California. We have plants from Southern California that reach their northernmost distributions here. So we have a huge variety of plants, and because of our microhabitats, if you don't like the weather, go 3 minutes and you're in a different microclimate. There'll be different plants depending on where you are in the peninsula. How far are you from the ocean? How far are you from the end of the fog belt? What kind of slope are you on? And the plants will vary with that, which is why Garland Park looks very different from Point Lobos. There are some species that are the same, but there are some that are very different, because those 7 miles make a huge difference.
Native plants are also great if you live in an area with limited water supply. Native plants usually work with whatever Mother Nature supplies, but there is a way to make your garden water-wise with or without native plants.
I think the most important thing to remember when using water in the garden is to let the plants tell you if they need the water. It doesn't make a lot of sense to water a plant that already has a lot of health to it. And to get that done effectively, a drip irrigation system is recommended. If you have overhead sprays that are watering a shrub bed, for example, where there's just a few plants located in a bed and you're watering that entire area, then you can really save a lot of water just by replacing those spray heads with a drip system. And there's a lot of really cost-effective, efficient systems you can buy at your local hardware store, or ask a landscape contractor to do the job if you really want to get it done right. That's also recommended. Use mulch. Mulch is something that you can't stress enough how effective mulch is at retaining soil moisture. If you have bare soil in your garden, think about going to your local landfill. There's a lot of recycled mulches that are available for low cost, if not free, and you can apply that mulch layer maybe 2 or 3 inches over the bare soil, and that does a lot of help. That's a very good benefit to maintain weed control and also keep soil moisture up. You don't have to water as often. Instead of planting a high water use turf, you can look at all kinds of different ground covers that might serve the same purpose if you're not going to be using your lawn for recreational uses. Flaxes and phormiums and species that come from drier climates can be used. In order to save water in your lawn, if you really need a lawn, then make sure that your sprinklers are repaired. Don't let leaks go unnoticed and broken sprinkler heads. Water twice a week. You can typically get by in our climate in the Monterey Bay area with about a half an hour a week of runtime. So if you water your lawn 15 minutes twice a week, that should keep the lawn happy and healthy, and your kids too. You'd like to group your plants. You don't want to have high water using plants right next to a low water using plant. That leads to a lot of inefficiency. So when you first plan your garden, if you don't have a garden that's already installed, really look at the types of plants and the water use and group them appropriately. The best times of day to water are typically in the early morning hours before it gets windy and before the sun gets up. A lot of water can be lost to evaporation, so don't run your sprinklers in the middle of the day. Use water wisely. It's a resource that's going to become more and more valuable as population grows in our area. Supplies are limited, and think about it. Think more about using less.
What is California's #1 native food? Well, it's a plant that produces a bumper crop of good eats that goes largely ignored every year. We'll tell you more about that, as well as what to do about another bumper crop. Most gardeners have an overabundance of tomatoes every year. Our special guest chef, Supervisor Jane Parker, will show us how she preserves all those tomatoes.